Freddie Freeman has seen a lot of winning. He has played in postseason baseball. He has hit walk-off home runs in World Series games with the weight of an entire franchise sitting on every pitch. He has stood in clubhouses filled with champagne and the specific kind of noise that only happens when a team has accomplished something that will be remembered for decades. He knows what a winning environment looks and feels like. He has lived inside one long enough to understand its rhythms, its textures, its invisible architecture. And yet, when Freeman sat down and tried to articulate what has changed about the Los Angeles Dodgers since Shohei Ohtani arrived, what is genuinely, fundamentally different about this organization, this clubhouse, this team, he reached for a word that stopped people cold. Unusual. Not better, though it is. Not more talented, though that too is true. Not more confident or more focused or more driven, though all of those things apply. Unusual. Because what Ohtani has done to the Dodgers is not simply addition. It is not the straightforward equation of a great player joining a good team and making it greater. What has happened inside this organization since number 17 walked through the clubhouse doors is something more subtle, more pervasive, and ultimately more powerful than anything Freeman had a framework to anticipate. I didn't notice it when he was an opponent, Freeman admitted. And that sentence, quiet as it is, contains the entire story. Because from the outside, you can track Ohtani's statistics. You can scout his pitches. You can build a game plan around his tendencies. You can watch the numbers and understand, intellectually, that you are dealing with one of the greatest players in the history of the sport. What you cannot see from the outside is what he does to the people around him. What he changes in a clubhouse simply by being present in it every day. What standard he silently sets that everyone else, without being asked, begins to reach for. Freeman saw it from the outside for years. He did not understand it until he was standing inside it. This is what he found. When Freeman spoke about the unusual change Ohtani has brought to the Dodgers, he was not speaking in generalities. He was not offering the polished, media-trained praise that athletes typically extend to their teammates in public settings. He was describing something specific. Something he had observed, processed, and arrived at a genuine conclusion about, the kind of conclusion that takes time to form because it requires living alongside its subject long enough to understand what you are actually witnessing. The confession itself carried a particular honesty. I didn't notice it when he was an opponent. This is an admission that something was happening that Freeman, one of the most experienced and perceptive players in the game, missed entirely while looking at it from the outside. What he missed was the interior reality of being Ohtani's teammate. The daily, cumulative experience of sharing a clubhouse, a dugout, a practice field with a player whose relationship to the game operates on a frequency that most professional athletes, even elite ones, have never encountered. From the opposing dugout, Ohtani is a problem to be solved. A statistical profile. A scouting report. A set of tendencies to exploit and vulnerabilities to expose. He is reduced, necessarily, to what he produces on the field, because that is the only dimension of him that matters when you are trying to beat him. Inside the Dodgers clubhouse, that reduction is impossible. Inside the Dodgers clubhouse, the full reality of what Ohtani is becomes visible. And what Freeman found, when he stopped having to think about Ohtani as an opponent and started experiencing him as a teammate, was something he did not have a ready category for. Something unusual. The first thing that changes when Ohtani is your teammate is the baseline. Not the baseline of performance, though that shifts too. The baseline of preparation. The invisible standard that a clubhouse collectively holds itself to, not because anyone has announced it or posted it on a wall, but because it exists in the behavior of the people who set the tone. Every clubhouse has tone setters. Players whose habits and attitudes and daily rhythms become the unofficial standard that the rest of the roster orients itself around. In most major league clubhouses, these are veteran players whose respect has been earned through years of performance. They set the tone through presence, through reputation, through the accumulated authority of a long career. Ohtani sets the tone differently. He does not set it through authority or reputation, though both are unquestionable. He sets it through behavior so consistent and so total that it becomes impossible to observe daily without being affected by it. His preparation before games, the specificity of it, the duration of it, the evident seriousness with which he approaches every individual element, functions as a kind of constant, silent communication to everyone around him. It does not say, "You should do this." It does not point at anyone or demand anything. It simply exists, day after day, as evidence of what total commitment to the craft of baseball actually looks like when translated into behavior. Freeman watched this and felt something shift in himself. Not because anyone told him to change. Because watching someone operate at that level of intentionality, every single day, makes you examine your own relationship to preparation. It makes you ask questions about your own routine that you had stopped asking because your existing routine was already producing results that the world would consider extraordinary. Ohtani's presence in a clubhouse raises the questions that comfort and success tend to silence. And that, Freeman realized, is the unusual change. Not a rule or a program or a culture initiative. Just a man, doing what he does, every day, at a level that makes everyone around him quietly reconsider what they are capable of. The transformation of the Dodgers since Ohtani's arrival has not gone unnoticed by the American sports media. What began as coverage of a historic contract and the spectacle of a two-way superstar joining baseball's most visible franchise has evolved into something more substantive, a documented, ongoing examination of how one player has changed the identity of an entire organization. The narrative the U.S. media has constructed around the Ohtani-era Dodgers is built on observable facts. Championship performances. Record-setting individual seasons. A roster that has, since his arrival, operated with a consistency and a collective intensity that even Dodger teams of previous years, teams that were themselves among the most talented in baseball, did not fully match. But the more interesting thread in the American media coverage is the cultural story. The way journalists who cover the team daily have described the atmosphere around the Dodgers as qualitatively different. The way the organization's relationship to its own standards has evolved. The way players across the roster have spoken about what it means to come to the ballpark knowing that the person in the next locker approaches every day the way Ohtani approaches every day. Major outlets have pointed to the Dodgers' sustained excellence not merely as the product of payroll or roster construction, though both are factors, but as something emerging from within the clubhouse itself. From a culture that has been shaped, in ways both visible and invisible, by the presence of a player whose commitment to excellence functions as a permanent, ambient pressure on everyone around him. The historic transformation the media has documented is not just in the win column, though the wins are there. It is in the character of the team. In the way they play in late-inning situations. In the way they respond to adversity within games. In the collective confidence that comes from sharing a roster with someone who makes the concept of limitation feel genuinely optional. To fully appreciate what Freeman is describing, it helps to trace the arc of his relationship to Ohtani across time. For years, Freddie Freeman faced Ohtani as an opponent. He stood in the batter's box against his pitching and walked to the plate in games where Ohtani's presence in the opposing lineup was a factor in every strategic conversation his team had. He experienced Ohtani the way every other player in the National League experienced him, as a force to be managed, contained, navigated. In that context, Freeman's understanding of Ohtani was necessarily external. Based on what he could observe from the field, from the opposing dugout, from the footage and reports that informed his preparation. Ohtani was, to Freeman in those years, an extraordinarily gifted and dangerous player. One of the best in the game. A problem that required serious attention on any day when their teams shared a field. That understanding was accurate as far as it went. It simply did not go far enough. What Freeman discovered when he became Ohtani's teammate was that the external picture, comprehensive as it seemed, was capturing perhaps half of what Ohtani actually is. The statistics, the pitch arsenal, the power numbers, the two-way performance, all of that was visible from the outside. All of that could be scouted and analyzed and prepared for. What could not be seen from the outside was the person behind the performance. The daily reality of how Ohtani moves through a baseball season. The way he interacts with teammates, with a warmth and a genuine interest in the people around him that exists, intact and unhurried, beneath the extraordinary demands of what he does on the field. The humor. The curiosity. The way he makes the people around him feel seen and valued even as he is simultaneously operating at a level of personal excellence that separates him from virtually every other player alive. Freeman did not notice this when Ohtani was an opponent because it was not available to him. It only becomes available when you are close enough, for long enough, to see the whole person rather than the statistical profile. When Freeman got that access, his understanding was permanently revised. The context for all of this, in 2025, is a Dodgers team that is not simply trying to win a championship. They are trying to win a third consecutive championship. And the distinction matters. Back-to-back championships are rare in modern baseball. The depth of the sport, the length of the season, the randomness of playoff baseball, all of these factors conspire against sustained dynasty-level dominance. Teams that achieve consecutive titles are remembered not just as talented but as something more, as organizations that figured out how to sustain excellence across time, against the entropy that eventually finds every great team. 3 consecutive championships would place this Dodgers team in a category that almost nothing in the modern era of baseball inhabits. It would be a statement not just about talent but about organizational culture, about the ability to maintain hunger and focus and competitive intensity in the face of success that would, for most teams, produce comfort and complacency. The fact that Ohtani is described as seriously aiming for a third consecutive title carries weight precisely because of everything Freeman has described. The unusual change Ohtani brought to the Dodgers is not a one-time phenomenon. It is not the novelty effect of a new presence in a clubhouse that fades after the first season together. It is structural. It is baked into the daily reality of what this team does and how it does it. A player whose preparation does not vary based on the standings. A player who does not distinguish between the intensity he brings to a game in April and the intensity he brings to a game in October. A player whose relationship to the concept of good enough appears to be one of genuine incomprehension, for whom the question of whether today's preparation was sufficient is answered not by the result but by the honesty of the effort. This is what serious looks like, when applied to a third consecutive championship. And the Dodgers, having spent 2 full seasons absorbing what that standard feels like from the inside, are a different team for it. There is a quality to the change Ohtani has brought to the Dodgers that Freeman's word, unusual, begins to capture but does not fully contain. It is unusual. But it is also permanent. Because the players who have shared a clubhouse with Ohtani, who have watched his preparation up close, who have felt the daily pressure of his standards and risen to meet them, those players do not go back. The baseline, once raised, does not return to where it was. The questions that his presence forces you to ask about your own commitment, your own preparation, your own relationship to the pursuit of excellence, those questions do not stop being asked just because the season ends. The U.S. media has documented the external transformation. The championships. The records. The historic individual performances. The team statistics that place this era of Dodger baseball among the most successful in the franchise's storied history. What the cameras cannot fully capture is the internal transformation. The one Freeman is describing. The one that happens in a clubhouse where a player of Ohtani's character shows up every day and simply does what he does, without announcement, without demand, without anything except the total, unwavering commitment to being the best version of himself that the day allows. That transformation is the unusual change. It started the moment Ohtani walked through the door. It has been compounding ever since. And in 2025, with a third consecutive championship in sight, it is the invisible engine powering everything the Dodgers are doing. When Freddie Freeman said he didn't notice it when Ohtani was an opponent, he was saying something that takes a moment to fully absorb. He was saying that proximity to greatness reveals things that observation from a distance cannot. That being inside the experience of Ohtani as a teammate is categorically different from being outside it. That the full picture of what this player is, not just the statistics, not just the performance, but the person, the standard, the daily reality of how he moves through a baseball life, is only available to the people who share it with him. The Dodgers share it with him every day. And it has changed them. Not just in the standings. Not just in the trophy case. In the way they think about what is possible. In the way they approach the hours and days that produce the games that produce the seasons that produce the championships. Freeman confessed the unusual change because it is the truest thing he knows about what has happened to this team. And the third consecutive championship that Ohtani is seriously aiming for in 2025 is, in many ways, the logical destination of that change. Something unusual began when number 17 arrived in Dodger blue. 2 years later, the rest of baseball is still trying to catch up.